There comes a moment in every story when the shadows that once mock the light begin to tremble, a moment when the echo of every wrongdoing finally returns to the place it came from, and perhaps you feel it already, something in the air shifting, something unseen moving on your behalf. It is that quiet, holy trembling before justice arrives, the kind of justice that does not knock, but enters with authority. The kind of justice that does not shout, but speaks with a voice that cannot be ignored. The kind of justice that finds those who believed they could get away with everything they did to you. You may not fully understand it yet, but a divine clock has been ticking all along. Not your clock, not theirs. A higher clock. One that never loses time, never forgets, never overlooks. There were days you wondered if the pain you carried would ever be answered, if the wounds they carved into you would ever be acknowledged by anything greater than your own tears. But the one who watches silently, the one who sees without speaking, has been gathering every moment of cruelty, every lie spoken behind your back, every betrayal crafted in secrecy, every act meant to break your spirit. And now, that quiet collection is becoming a storm. The truth is, people deceive themselves long before they deceive others. They convince themselves there will be no consequences, that their actions dissolve into the air once the damage is done. They tell themselves that hurting you was nothing more than a fleeting impulse, a justified decision, or a harmless game. But life is not built on forgetfulness. Life remembers, and life returns everything to its sender, especially what was sent with darkness. There is a season when the innocent suffer in silence, and there is a season when the guilty suffer in ways they cannot outrun. You are entering the second season now. The ground beneath those who wronged you is beginning to crack, not because you wished harm on anyone, but because truth has a way of demanding balance. They tried to bury you under the weight of their envy, deceit, and selfishness. Now they are the ones struggling to breathe under the heaviness of what they created. You were patient, they were reckless. You healed, they hid. You grew quietly, they pretended loudly. And while you were rebuilding the parts of yourself that they tried to destroy, they were building an illusion to hide from the consequences of their own actions. Illusions don't last. Masks don't hold forever. And now their own choices are turning against them, with a swiftness they never saw coming. Life is not punishing them on your behalf. It is teaching them. The same way fire teaches the hand that dared to touch it. The same way darkness teaches the one who tried to blind others. They set a trap, and they fell into it. They sent out harm, and harm found its way home. They opened the door to chaos, and chaos remembered the path back to them. What they planted is growing now, and the harvest is merciless. You must understand, karma does not arrive gently to those who acted without mercy. It arrives like a force breaking through locked doors, demanding accountability from hearts that refuse to offer it. For some, the lesson comes in the form of loss. For others, in the form of isolation. Some face sleepless nights. Others face shame that they can no longer hide. Some lose the very things they used to hurt others. Some lose the people they once used to humiliate you. And some lose themselves in the emptiness they created. But this is not about revenge. This is about restoration. This is about the universe correcting what was thrown off balance. This is about the truth finally rising with the weight it deserves. Look closely. The people who underestimated the strength of your soul are now learning that soul was protected all along. The ones who laughed at your pain are now silenced by their own. The ones who believed they had destroyed you are now realizing they only destroyed their own peace. You walked through the fire they lit. They must now walk through the smoke that follows them. Their time is up. The consequences they outran are standing at their doorstep. What they did in darkness is confronting them in daylight. And while they grapple with the weight of their own choices, you will rise with a peace they never managed to steal. Because life is finally defending you in ways you once wished someone would. People who cause deliberate harm often convince themselves that their actions dissolve the moment they walk away. They believe the wound disappears simply because they refuse to look at it. They imagine that life is blind, that consequences are optional, and that the soul they injured will simply move on without any echo returning. Yet reality has a memory far deeper than theirs, and life holds its own quiet record of every intention, every betrayal, every silent cruelty. What they fail to understand is that nothing truly vanishes. Energy is never lost. It only travels, waits, and returns. When someone harms an innocent heart, they create a ripple they cannot see. They may celebrate in the moment, feeling superior, victorious, untouchable. They may even feel a strange satisfaction watching another person crumble under the weight of their actions. But what they misjudge is the nature of harm itself. Pain is not passive. Pain is a traveler. It moves, it gathers momentum, and it eventually circles back to the one who sent it out. They think their cruelty ends with you, but life ensures it ends with them. Most people who wound others act from a place of arrogance. They think they have mastered control over outcomes, control over people, control over consequences. They assume that your silence protects them, that your forgiveness excuses them, that your tears go unnoticed, and that your humility means weakness. But your silence was not permission. It was grace. Your forgiveness was not endorsement. It was strength. And your tears were not ignored by life. They were recorded, every single one. You walked away carrying the pain, but life stayed behind to collect every ounce of truth. The return of karma does not rush, nor does it hesitate. It waits until the moment is ripe. It waits until the lessons they refuse to learn finally corner them. It waits until the mask they wore begins to crumble under its own weight. And when the moment arrives, it does not knock gently. It comes with a force strong enough to unravel the false confidence they wrap themselves in. Suddenly, the very things they used to harm you become the instruments of their own undoing. Those who hurt you forget one crucial truth. The world is built on circles. Everything moves in cycles. Seasons, tides, emotions, choices. Nothing remains suspended or hidden forever. What they sent out will seek them again, not out of vengeance, but out of the natural order. The universe is not cruel. It is precise. It returns exactly what was given, so they can finally understand the gravity of what they did. It is easy for someone to laugh at your pain when they believe life sides with the loudest, the strongest, or the most ruthless. But life sides with truth, and in time, truth becomes undeniable. They may have mocked your vulnerability, mistaken your kindness for naivety, or dismissed your gentleness as weakness. They thought the crack in your heart was final. They thought their betrayal would define your destiny. They thought their cruelty would echo longer than your resilience. But harm sent toward a pure heart does not stick. It circles. The moment karma begins its return, they feel something shifting in their atmosphere. Their luck changes. Their relationships unravel. Their confidence weakens. Their peace disappears. They face shadows they created while thinking those shadows would only follow you. They feel the tension of choices chasing them, consequences reaching for them, truth tapping on their shoulder. They finally face the weight of the pain they once delivered so casually. This is not because you cursed them or wished them harm. The innocent rarely do. This is because the universe values balance, and where there is imbalance, correction follows. They tipped the scale with dishonesty, cruelty, and selfishness. Now the scale responds. The same darkness they once pushed onto you becomes the mirror that forces them to see themselves, not who they pretended to be, who they truly are. And as they face the consequences, you rise, you grow, you heal, not because they fell, but because you refuse to stay broken. Their return of karma does not weaken you, it frees you. You learn that the universe was never ignoring your suffering. It was simply preparing the moment when truth would speak louder than deceit. The pain they caused becomes the proof of the strength you built, and the justice they face becomes the reminder that no act of cruelty ever escapes its author. Karma does not rush, but it never forgets. Those who caused you pain often walked away believing the moment was over, that the universe had closed its eyes and that time would wash away the stain of what they did. They mistook delay for disappearance. They misread silence as approval. They assumed that because nothing fell on them immediately, nothing ever would. But life is not driven by speed, it is driven by truth, and truth takes its time. It waits until the mask slips, until the heart softens or tightens, until the soil is ready for the harvest of what was planted long ago. When someone harms you without remorse, they plant a seed they cannot see. That seed does not sprout overnight. It lies hidden beneath the surface while they continue their lives, convinced they escape the consequences. They may climb higher, laugh louder, or pretend stronger. They may even appear blessed, rewarded, or immune. But beneath the surface, the roots are forming, slowly, steadily, inevitably. The harvest of their own actions is growing in the dark, where they cannot monitor it, cannot adjust it, cannot avoid it. The moment karma begins its return is rarely visible from the outside, but it is always unfolding on the inside. The delay is what fools them. The universe gives them time, time to reflect, time to repent, time to change. But most people who harm others do not use that time wisely. They use it to repeat patterns, to deepen their arrogance, to sharpen their cruelty. They convince themselves there simply are no consequences for them. That illusion becomes their downfall, because karma waits until their pride reaches its peak. It waits until they feel invincible. It waits until they believe the past is buried, and only then does it move. This is why the response feels so sudden and so brutal when it finally comes. They spent so long believing nothing could touch them that the smallest shift feels catastrophic. One closed door becomes a panic. One broken relationship becomes a collapse. One exposed lie becomes a reckoning. The consequences arrive not to destroy them, but to strip away the arrogance that kept them blind. They must finally meet the version of themselves they tried so hard to hide. People who wound others rarely expect their own sadness to reflect the sadness they caused. They never imagine lying awake at night with the same heaviness they once placed on your chest. They never imagine losing the very thing they used to hurt you. They never imagine feeling unseen, unheard, or unvalued. Yet when karma completes its circle, the emotions they once dismissed become their own teachers. The pain they ignored in you becomes the pain they must now fight within themselves. The universe is patient, but it is also precise. It does not deliver consequences randomly. What returns to them matches the intention behind what they gave. If they acted with envy, envy becomes their tormentor. If they acted with deceit, deceit becomes the rope that trips them. If they acted with cruelty, cruelty finds them in moments they least expect. Their punishment is often not what happens to them externally, but what awakens internally. Guilt, regret, emptiness, or the realization that they destroyed something valuable without ever understanding its worth. And while karma does its work, you begin to rise in ways they never believed possible. Your healing progresses quietly. Your strength returns piece by piece. Your clarity sharpens. Your spirit grows. You become someone they cannot reach, cannot control, cannot diminish. The universe lifts you at the same pace it humbles them. You are being rewarded in the same measure they are being corrected. The beauty of karmic timing is that it aligns perfectly with your readiness. You needed time to heal before seeing justice. You needed inner stability before witnessing their consequences. You needed growth before truth returned. Now that you have risen above the version of yourself they tried to break, the universe reveals what was hidden. Their consequences were simply waiting for your healing to begin. Karma moves slowly because it wants the transformation to be undeniable. It waits until both sides, the wounded and the wounder, reach the point where the truth can no longer be avoided. The delay is not a weakness, it is wisdom, because when karma finally arrives, the lesson is so complete, so clear, so piercing, that neither they nor you can misinterpret what is happening. For them, it is the moment they realize life did not forget. For you, it is the moment you realize life always remembered. Illusions are comforting to those who rely on them. They act as shelter for the guilty, a place where consequences seem distant and reality feels adjustable. Those who hurt you lived inside such illusions. They convinced themselves that as long as they acted confidently, no one would notice the harm they caused. They believed that as long as they smiled publicly and lied skillfully, their actions would disappear into the fog. But illusions, no matter how beautifully crafted, cannot hold forever. Eventually, truth begins to seep through the cracks, and when it does, the entire structure collapses under its own weight. People who wound others often depend on a false image to protect them. They hide behind charm, behind reputation, behind carefully curated stories. They may even pretend to be victims to avoid accountability for the pain they caused. Each lie becomes a plank in the fragile house they build. Each manipulation becomes another wall. Each betrayal becomes another layer of paint, covering the rot beneath. And while they are busy maintaining the illusion, life is quietly preparing the moment when everything will be exposed. The problem with illusions is that they demand constant energy to sustain. They require rehearsed lies, forced confidence, and a mind always alert to the fear of being found out. This creates a private exhaustion they cannot confess and a quiet panic they cannot soothe. To the world they may appear strong, successful, or untouchable, but inside their conscience begins to whisper. Their peace begins to shake. Their sleep becomes interrupted. Their thoughts become restless. They start to sense that something is coming, something they've spent their life avoiding, and indeed something is. The universe has a way of ordering events so perfectly that the truth reveals itself at the exact moment it needs to. An illusion can only stand as long as the truth stays silent. But truth is never silent forever. There comes a day when the people they deceived begin to see patterns. There comes a day when someone notices inconsistencies. There comes a day when the very charm that once protected them becomes transparent. The same mouth that lied starts to tremble. The same attitude that once seemed powerful becomes suspicious. The same reputation they depended on starts to decay. Illusions collapse not because someone exposes them, but because they lose strength from within. Their lies begin turning on each other. Their stories become tangled. Their behavior contradicts itself. Their pride blinds them, and blindness leads to mistakes. One wrong word, one poorly executed lie, one unexpected moment. This is all it takes for truth to slip through the cracks. And when truth enters, it does not come quietly. It arrives with a force great enough to tear apart everything they built. Those who wronged you never expected to face their own reflection. They never imagined that the world would one day see the parts of them they tried hardest to hide. They assumed your silence kept their illusion intact. They assumed your forgiveness erased their deceit. They assumed your absence protected their reputation. What they never understood is that truth has always been standing behind them, waiting patiently for its turn. When the illusion finally collapses, it happens brutally. The people they once impressed step back in disappointment. The friends they used as shields grow distant. The lies they leaned on crumble. Their confidence fractures. Their relationships weaken. Their image dissolves. And without the illusion, they are left with nothing but the truth of their own actions. Truth they spent their entire life running from. What they experience in that moment is not punishment, it's revelation. They see, often for the first time, the depth of the pain they caused. They see the cruelty they dismissed as normal. They see the manipulation they justified. They see the harm they inflicted without remorse. And the weight of that truth sits heavily on them, heavier than anything they ever placed on you. While their illusion collapses, your truth rises. You gain clarity, peace, and strength. You grow into the version of yourself they never wanted you to become. The collapse of their illusion is simply the universe removing the shadows they hid behind, so you can finally see the victory you are always meant to witness. Their downfall is not your triumph, your healing is. Life watches everything in a way that feels almost impossible for the human mind to grasp. It observes without interrupting, records without announcing itself, and waits without growing impatient. While you carried the hurt they caused you, life was quietly gathering every detail, every lie they told, every moment they dismissed your feelings, every act of cruelty they executed with confidence, every betrayal they thought would stay hidden forever. Nothing slipped through the cracks, nothing was overlooked. They believed their actions dissolved with time. But life doesn't operate by forgetting, it operates by balance. And balance always returns. When someone wounds an innocent heart, the universe takes note, not in anger, not in vengeance, but in precision. It understands that every act, whether kind or cruel, sends out a signal that eventually must come home. Those who hurt you believed they held the upper hand. They believed their manipulation was invisible, their lies were undetectable, and their selfishness was justified. They walked away without remorse, confident that the story had ended on their terms. What they never realized was that life was quietly gathering every injustice and storing it, not as a threat, but as truth. Truth is patient. It never rushes to reveal itself because it knows its power. It waits until the moment when exposure will be undeniable, and during that waiting, life begins to shape circumstances, align events, and create situations where everything they tried to bury starts rising to the surface. A careless action here, a poorly crafted lie there, a new person who sees through them. A moment they cannot control. Slowly, the world around them begins to reflect what they tried to hide from. At first, the signs are small, minor inconveniences, subtle disruptions, unexpected tension, accidents that feel unlucky. They might even laugh them off, believing it's just a bad day or a temporary setback. But life is not dealing out random misfortune. It is beginning the process of balancing the scale. Those early cracks are warnings, gentle reminders that something deeper is shifting. And when they ignore the signs, as most do, the consequences gain momentum. What they sent out returns with a weight they are not prepared to carry. The lies they told begin to unravel. The people they deceived become distant or skeptical. The opportunities they used to take for granted start slipping through their fingers. Their relationships become fragile. Their confidence begins to crumble. They feel an unease they cannot explain, an inner discomfort they cannot silence. It is the beginning of accountability. Subtle, steady, inescapable. Life always defends the one who was wronged, but it does so quietly at first. It allows the guilty space to see what they've done, to reflect, to change. But those who hurt others rarely use that space for self-awareness. Instead, they double down, lie more, pretend more, hide more, and so life moves from gentle correction to unmistakable confrontation. What they once built on dishonesty begins collapsing. What they once gained through manipulation turns into loss. What they once celebrated becomes a burden too heavy to hold. This is when the truth they ignored becomes the truth they must face. People begin to notice the patterns. The masks they wore slip with every stressful moment. The stories they crafted contradict one another. Their facade crumbles in public ways they cannot control. And the irony is that they see it happening long before anyone else does. Their peace disappears. Their sleep becomes restless. Their emotions become unpredictable. Their world begins to shrink. Life is not punishing them. It is revealing them. Revelation is the universe's form of justice. It exposes what needs to be seen, not to destroy a person, but to dismantle the harm they built. The truth rising around them is the same truth they tried to silence in you. The balance restoring itself is the same balance they disrupted. And the weight they now feel is the same weight you carried, but learned to rise above. Every injustice they inflicted on you has returned, not out of vengeance, but out of harmony. The universe is not cruel, it is consistent. It defends the quiet, honors the wounded, and restores dignity to those who suffered in silence. While they fall apart under the truth they denied, you rise into the truth you always deserved. Pain has a way of becoming a mirror, even when the person who caused it believes they've escaped its reflection. Those who hurt you never imagined that the sadness they carelessly placed on your shoulders would one day sit on theirs. They believed your suffering would stay trapped inside you, buried in silence, forgotten in time. They assumed your heart would carry the wound alone, while they walked away untouched and unbothered. But suffering is not a closed door. It is an echo. It travels, it transforms, and eventually it returns to the one who created it. The hurt you endure becomes the very light that exposes their darkness, the very weight that causes their balance to crumble, the very truth they must now confront within themselves. When someone wounds an innocent soul, they blind themselves to the emotional reality they created. They see only the surface, the tears, the confusion, the heartbreak, never understanding that these emotions have depth, memory, and spiritual gravity. They did not consider how deeply their actions pierced you, or how long the heaviness stayed with you. They did not care enough to imagine the silent nights you spent replaying their words, the moments you questioned your worth, or the days you struggled just to breathe under the weight of their betrayal. To them, it was a moment. To you, it became a season. And the universe remembers seasons. What they fail to realize is that the pain they caused has been shaping something within you. Strength, clarity, resilience, wisdom. You were forced to grow because of what they broke. You were pushed into self-reflection because of what they shattered. You rose not because they lifted you, but because they left you. And as you healed, something powerful happened. Your spirit became aligned with truth, while theirs became entangled in guilt. Guilt is a quiet hunter. It does not appear immediately. It waits until the noise of their life becomes silent. It waits until the distractions fade, until the thrill fades, until the ego softens. And then, without warning, it begins to whisper. It speaks through their restless nights, their unexplained anxiety, their sudden dissatisfaction. They begin feeling the emotions they once mocked in you. They begin facing the heaviness they once placed on your chest. They begin living the very emptiness they left you with. This is how suffering becomes a mirror. It does not return to them in the exact form they delivered it. It returns in a way that forces them to understand it fully. You felt loneliness. They feel abandonment. You felt unworthiness. They feel regret. You felt heartbreak. They feel loss. You felt confusion. They feel self-doubt. Life does not copy pain. It customizes it so the lesson is undeniable. Eventually, they begin to see the truth in ways they never expected. They notice how their actions have affected their relationships. They notice how people treat them differently, hesitate around them, or stop trusting them. They notice how opportunities slip away, how peace becomes harder to find, how joy feels shallow. Their emotional world begins to crack, not as punishment, but as revelation, because the pain they created in you has now become the lens through which they must see themselves. They are no longer able to hide behind arrogance or excuses. They must face their reflection, the real one, not the illusion they built. This moment is brutal for them. It forces them to feel what they insisted you were overreacting about. It forces them to acknowledge that their choices had consequences, not only for you, but for their own soul. And the heaviest part of this experience is the realization that they can't undo what they did. They can apologize, but they cannot reverse the damage. They cannot revert, but they cannot erase the past. They can change, but they cannot avoid the weight of the truth that now sits heavily on their shoulders. Meanwhile, something entirely different is happening to you. The suffering that once crushed you is no longer a weight. It is a revelation. It reveals your strength, your depth, your resilience. It shows you that the pain they thought would define you actually refined you. It shows you that your spirit is stronger than their cruelty. It shows you that what they tried to destroy became the very reason you rose higher. Life does not return pain to them to satisfy your heart. It returns pain to them because truth must complete its circle. And as they face the emotional consequences of what they did, you step into a version of yourself that could only exist because you endured what they never understood. Power often deceives the one who holds it. Those who hurt you carried themselves with a confidence that felt untouchable. They acted as though breaking your heart made them stronger, as though betraying your trust proved their superiority, as though diminishing your worth somehow increased their own. They walked with a pride that convinced them they had won, that your pain was proof of their dominance. But the truth is simple and unchanging. Hurting someone does not make a person powerful. It exposes how deeply powerless they already are. And now, karma is showing them this with a clarity they can no longer outrun. People who cause harm often operate from a place of insecurity masked as strength. They hide their fear behind arrogance, their emptiness behind manipulation, and their self-doubt behind cruelty. They believed that by controlling your emotions, they were in control of life itself. They believed that by breaking your spirit, they were building their own. But power built on the suffering of another is a fragile illusion. It may hold for a season, but it cannot survive truth. They mistook dominance for authority, but the universe never recognized the authority they pretended to carry. Sooner or later, the facade cracks. The confidence that once looked solid begins to wobble. The pride that once felt so justified begins to rot from within. The ego they fed so relentlessly starts collapsing under the weight of its own lies. What they once did effortlessly Lying, manipulating, dismissing becomes harder. The charm that once allowed them to escape responsibility loses its shine. Their words no longer hit with the same power. Their presence no longer intimidates. Slowly, they begin to realize that the control they thought they had over you never truly existed. It was temporary, shallow, and rooted in fear, not strength. As karma starts unfolding, the very traits they used to hurt you begin working against them. Their arrogance becomes a trap. Their pride becomes their downfall. Their confidence blinds them to their own mistakes. Their inability to reflect leaves them vulnerable to consequences they never prepared for. They start stumbling in the same ways they once mocked you for. They start losing the clarity they once bragged about. They start feeling the confusion they once forced onto you. The universe uses their own character against them, not to punish them, but to reveal who they really are. True power is quiet, steady, grounded. Their power was noisy, chaotic, and insecure, and now that life is pulling away the false layers, they stand face to face with the reality of their emptiness. They realize that the strength they flaunted was borrowed from your softness. The confidence they displayed was built on your forgiveness. The control they held was sustained by your patience. Once these parts of you healed and withdrew, their entire sense of authority collapsed, because their power never came from within. It came from the harm they inflicted on you. The universe has a way of exposing this kind of false strength in the most painful ways. They may lose relationships. They may lose respect. They may lose the image they worked so hard to maintain. They may lose their peace, their sense of direction, or the illusion of stability they depended on. They begin to feel helpless in situations where they once felt dominant. The world around them shifts in ways they cannot explain, and the people who once admired them begin seeing the truth they once hid. The most devastating part for them is the moment they realize they no longer inspire fear, admiration, or obedience, only pity or avoidance. They begin to feel what they once pushed onto you: doubt, confusion, insecurity. And because they never learned how to deal with these emotions honestly, the experience is overwhelming. They crumble under feelings you learned to endure. They drown in shadows they once forced you to walk through. You, on the other hand, have gained a strength they never possessed. Your suffering refined you. Your healing elevated you. Your resilience exposed the hollowness of their arrogance. The very thing they used to belittle you became the reason you surpassed them. And now, as their false power disintegrates, your true power rises quietly, not as revenge, but as revelation. Life is revealing to them that the power they celebrated was nothing but a fragile mask. And life is revealing to you that your gentleness, your endurance, and your heart were the real sources of strength all along. Darkness grows best in places where truth is avoided. Those who hurt you built their lives around avoiding the truth of who they were. They clung to lies because facing themselves felt unbearable. They surrounded themselves with distractions, with noise, with shallow victories, anything that kept them from recognizing the harm they caused. And while you were forced to confront your wounds, they were busy running from theirs. But running only works for a while. Eventually the darkness they created catches up, surrounds them, and becomes the very trap they once pushed you into. You healed, they hid. And now, what they hid from is swallowing them whole. When someone inflicts pain on another, they believe they have distanced themselves from suffering. They assume the consequences belong only to the one they hurt. They think life allows them to walk away untouched, unconcerned, unchanged. But emotions are not so easily escaped, especially those born from cruelty. That darkness attaches itself to their choices, their intentions, their relationships. It follows them through every decision, whispering truths they refuse to acknowledge, and as time passes, the weight grows heavier, pulling them deeper into the shadows they once used to control others. You, on the other hand, were pushed into darkness against your will. You sat with pain they caused. You confronted your tears. You faced the heartbreak directly. You wrestled with questions they never had the courage to ask. You grew through the suffering they tried to hide you in. Slowly, the darkness they forced on you became the very place where your strength was forged. It did not destroy you. It reshaped you. It did not silence you. It awakened you. And as you grew, the distance between you and them widened. While you ascended into healing, they descended into the very darkness they once used to wound you. Life has a strange but perfect sense of timing. The moment you begin to emerge from your suffering is often the same moment they begin to sink into theirs. It is not because you wished it. It is not because you asked for it. It is simply because the universe cannot allow one person to remain trapped in pain, while the one who caused it walks free forever. Balance demands correction. The soul demands truth, and truth, once ignored for too long, becomes a storm. Their storm begins internally. They start feeling emotions they have no ability to handle. A restlessness they cannot name, a sadness they cannot explain, a heaviness they cannot shake. They feel as if something is wrong, yet they can't pinpoint where the discomfort comes from. But you know. It is the same heaviness they once placed on your shoulders, the same ache they insisted you were too sensitive to carry, the same confusion they mocked in you. Now it becomes their companion. Now it interrupts their peace, their sleep, their sense of control. People who never learn to face their own darkness become consumed by it. They fall into patterns of isolation. Relationships begin to fail. Trust becomes difficult. Those they once charmed begin to see through the facade. Opportunities disappear. Confidence evaporates. They feel small in ways they once tried to make you feel small. They feel powerless in ways they once celebrated making you powerless. And the worst part for them is realizing they cannot blame you or anyone else for the collapse of their peace. It is all coming from within. Your healing created a contrast they cannot escape. You shine in ways that expose their shadows. You inspire in ways that confront their emptiness. You grow in ways that magnify their stagnation. The more you rise, the more they fall into the space they carved out with their choices. Your strength becomes a mirror that reflects their weakness. Your progress becomes a reminder of the path they refused to take. And while they struggled in the darkness they crafted, you live in the light you earned. In the end, the truth they avoided becomes the truth that haunts them. They can no longer outrun the consequences. They can no longer hide behind pride. They can no longer silence the guilt. Every step they take echoes with reminders of the pain they caused. Every day becomes harder to navigate. Every choice becomes a battle with the shadows that cling to them. They once believed they escaped what they did to you. Now they live in it. And you, who once suffered because of them, now walk freely, rising higher with each passing day. Balance is woven into the fabric of existence. It is subtle, quiet, and often invisible, but it is never absent. Those who harmed you violated that balance with their dishonesty, cruelty, and selfishness. They believed the universe would ignore their actions, that life would overlook the suffering they caused, that their wrongdoings would evaporate into silence. But the universe does not operate on human convenience, it operates on truth, and when truth is disturbed, it moves slowly and deliberately to restore what was broken. That restoration may take time, but when it comes, it arrives with a clarity that no one can deny. The consequences they face are not random punishments. They are the natural outcomes of the imbalance they created. Every deception they used to manipulate you begins unraveling. Every lie they told begins circling back, exposing itself in ways they cannot control. The relationships they built on falsehoods begin to crumble, revealing their true intentions to the world. The opportunities they gained through unfair means disappear just as quickly as they arrived. What they thought would elevate them now isolates them. What they built on cruelty now collapses beneath them. The universe does not rush to deliver these lessons because it wants the lesson to pierce through the layers of denial they wrap themselves in. It waits until they cannot escape accountability. It waits until their pride is softened. It waits until the illusion they hid behind becomes too heavy for them to carry. Once the moment is right, truth steps forward. Not cruelly, but undeniably, and forces them to face everything they avoided. They finally feel the weight of their choices, the cost of their actions, and the depth of the pain they caused. While this unfolds, something very different is happening to you. You are not stuck in the past. You are not trapped in the suffering they created. You are rising, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. Your spirit expands as theirs contracts. Your heart opens as theirs closes. Your path clears as theirs becomes tangled. This is not because you wished harm upon them. It is because your healing aligns you with truth. While their wrongdoing aligns them with consequences, you are being restored as they are being confronted. This season of restoration is sacred. It is the universe returning what was taken from you. Your confidence, your peace, your dignity. Every moment you spent doubting yourself begins transforming into quiet strength. Every tear you shed becomes a source of wisdom. Every wound they inflicted becomes a reason for your growth. You begin to see yourself differently, not as a victim of betrayal, but as someone who survived what was meant to break them. Your rising is not loud or dramatic. It is steady, grounded, undeniable. As you ascend, they descend into the very chaos they once created. The emptiness they left you with becomes their own. The confusion they pushed onto you becomes their daily reality. The instability they introduced into your life takes root in theirs. They feel the same loneliness they once imposed on you. They face the same betrayal they once normalized. They encounter the same disregard they showed you. Life returns everything, not out of revenge, but out of balance. This is why what they face now feels so heavy, so relentless, so brutally honest. It is the exact weight of the imbalance they caused. It is the universe placing truth where deception once lived. It is life defending the heart that suffered, the spirit that stayed kind, and the soul that refused to become cruel despite everything. And as this balance is restored, something else becomes clear. Your heart was never the problem. Your love was never the weakness. Your trust was never foolishness. They misjudged your purity as fragility, your forgiveness as naivety, your loyalty as desperation. Now, as the universe restores what you lost, those misjudgments stand exposed. They see the strength of the soul they tried to break and the smallness of the heart they used to harm you. This moment is not about their downfall. It is about your rising. It is not about revenge. It is about revelation. It is not about punishment. It is about divine order making itself known. Life is showing you that every ounce of pain mattered. Every act of resilience counted. Every tear was recorded, and every injustice was seen by something far greater than them. You are walking into your restoration, and they are walking into their reckoning. And in this, the universe is finally returning everything to its rightful place. In the quiet moments of your life when you wondered whether anyone saw your suffering, whether anyone understood the weight you carried, whether justice would ever find its way to your story, the universe was already moving. Every tear you shed became part of a truth too sacred to be ignored. Every wound you endured was witnessed by something far greater than human eyes. And now, as the scales begin to balance, you are finally seeing what was being prepared all along. You were never abandoned in your pain. You were being shaped by it. You were being strengthened, refined, awakened. The very experiences that felt like endings were actually the foundations of a new beginning. While those who hurt you slipped deeper into the shadows of their choices, you were rising, slowly, quietly, but unmistakably, into the light of who you were always meant to become. Their reckoning is not your victory, your healing is. Their downfall is not your justice, your restoration is. What happens to them is not the point. What is happening to you is. You are stepping into a life where your peace cannot be stolen, your worth cannot be questioned, and your heart cannot be manipulated by those who failed to honor it. You are stepping into a chapter where your strength speaks louder than your wounds, and your growth outshines the darkness they try to bury you in. Let life deal with them. Let karma teach them what you never could. Let the universe restore what was taken from you in ways that silence every doubt you ever carried. Your story is shifting, your spirit is rising, and your future is opening its doors. Walk forward with the quiet confidence of someone who has seen darkness and chosen light. Walk forward knowing that nothing done against you will ever outweigh the purpose that is being written for you now. Their time is ending. Yours is just beginning.